Hello again. I'm in my study and I'm just looking at some of these fantastic. I should have a pile of them ready rather than grabbing them from the bookcase. These are the Woozies. They're a series from the 70s written by Margaret Stewart Barry, who also wrote Simon and the Witch, that series that I loved as well. The Woozies were a TV show, and the thing about the books, I've only got a couple of them, is that they've got the most wonderful artwork in them, even if the stories were terrible. Distracted. The everything about them is just beautifully done. I think it's the combination of colours as well. and the design. I just don't think many books are like this now. They seem so eccentric and peculiar. This is 1973. One of the cliches about kids' books and TV shows of that era is that everybody must have been on acid or something, which is kind of a dreary cliche, but sometimes you think maybe it's true. When Big Woozy and the 6 little Woozies were settled in their new home, Jane and Pip decided they must have names. Well, there was Dizzy with the funny eyes, Kiwi with the long nose, like a kiwi, Fred the cheerful one with a cap, Huck with the spectacles and who looked rather like their American cousin, and Horatio, who dressed himself complete with an eye patch to look like Nelson. Finally, there was Flower, who usually liked to look cute with a flower in its hair. It's interesting pronoun work there. 1973, quite progressive. Now, as you'll have gathered, Jane and Pip knew as little about Woozies as you do, so they decided they would have to keep a close watch on them. You can imagine how worried they were when they saw Big Woozy frantically counting the little Woozies one day. He had given them numbers, and as you see, number 5 was missing. And who could number 5 be but Horatio, the one who wore a black patch? This is about getting lost, of course. Of course, that's why it's called. A Woozy Gets Lost. My favourite one is the one where they go on TV. There. Which looks a bit psychedelic. These are quite expensive to find these days. I can't believe anybody else would be as... maybe there's a whole kind of Woozies fandom. See, they're kind of acrylic, aren't they? Acrylic paints with ink, which is quite nice. Anyway, that's the Woozies. And something that I do kind of reach for now and then to pick up and read again. Frank O'Hara, more splashy colour. Why I am not a painter. I'm not a painter, I'm a poet. Why? I think I would rather be a painter, but I'm not. Well, for instance, Mike Goldberg is starting a painting. I drop in. Sit down and have a drink, he says. I drink, we drink. I look up. You have sardines in it. Yes, it needed something there. Oh, I go, and the days go by, and I drop in again. The painting is going well, and I go, and the days go by. I drop in. The painting is finished. Where's sardines? All that's left is just letters. It was too much, Mike says. But me, one day I'm thinking of a colour, orange. I write a line about orange. Pretty soon it's a whole page of words. Not lines. Then another page. There should be so much more, not of orange, of words, and of how terrible orange is and life. Days go by. It's even in prose. I am a real poet. My poem is finished and I haven't mentioned orange yet. It's 12 poems. I call it Oranges. And one day in a gallery, I see Mike's painting called Sardines. Good old Frank O'Hara. Stinky Cheese Man. Do you remember this? This is the 90s and I used to read this to my sister, who's quite a lot younger than me. I was 17 when she was born, and I got to read Louise lots and lots of kids' books and buy kids' books for her, which was lovely. And I got to know books in the 90s that I mightn't have known by then. Stinky Cheese Man was full of kind of subverted fairy tales and nursery rhymes and glorious artwork. Really kind of funny retellings. The font is a bit kind of mind-boggling now to look at. Once upon a time there was a giant. The giant squeezed Jack and said, "Tell me a better story, or I will grind your bones to make my bread. And when your story is finished, I will grind your bones to make my bread anyway." Ho, ho, ho. The giant laughed, an ugly laugh. Jack thought, "He'll kill me if I do. He'll kill me if I don't. There's only one way to get out of this." Jack cleared his throat, and then he began his story. Once upon a time there was a giant. The giant squeezed Jack and said, "Tell me a better story, or I will grind your bones to make my bread. And when your story is finished, I will grind your bones to make my bread anyway. Ho, ho, ho." And it infinitely recurs down the page until you can't see it anymore. I guess you'd call the jokes and the stylistic tricks Borgesian, if you had a mind to. But they are kind of those textual jokes. And often messing about with typeface and stuff. So it was a good primer, I suppose, for that kind of thing. There's the Stinky Cheese Man with his Parma ham mouth and his olives on a stick for eyes. Once upon a time there was an old woman and a little old man who lived together in a little old house. They were lonely. So the little old lady decided to make a man out of stinky cheese. She gave him a piece of bacon for a mouth and 2 olives for eyes and put him in the oven to cook. When she opened the door to see if he was done, the smell knocked her back. "Phew, what's that terrible smell?" she cried. The Stinky Cheese Man hopped out of the oven and ran down the door, calling, "Run, run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the Stinky Cheese Man." The little old lady and the little old man sniffed the air. "I'm not really very hungry," said the little old man. "I'm not really all that lonely," said the little old lady. So they didn't chase the Stinky Cheese Man. The Stinky Cheese Man ran and ran until he met a cow eating grass in a field. "Whoa, what's that awful smell?" said the cow. Oh, that's a nice book. It's a nice chapbook that I picked up in Whitby the last time we were there, from a cafe called the Jet Black Jewel Cafe on Skinner Street. And they did a book of Whitby folk tales with gorgeous woodcuts. That I really like. It's one of those little finds that you make when you go out to places and books fall out of nowhere, books you didn't know existed, and you collect them up. I collect them up. Things you couldn't get anywhere else. And that's what I really like. What should we be looking for, do you think? Oops, I dropped the Firebird. Sorry, Socks. Socks is on my lap and he's having books fall on him. These are wonderful. What to look for in winter. So what should we be looking for right now? It's not snowy anymore. The weather's changing, I think. It feels brighter and a bit lighter than it did a couple of weeks ago. Heavy rains that often fall in February have flooded the low-lying meadows in the Broad Valley. Both hedge and the wire fence are partly submerged, and the trees, which are growing on the far side of the fence that divides the flooded fields, are reflected in the still water. A flock of ducks, easily distinguishable by their flight, is about to alight beside some of their companions already swimming in the flood water. In fact, the cover has got ducks in the kind of last bits of snow and herons, and we get a heron here in Levenshulme once a year because we've got a pond out the back that Jeremy dug and made a few years ago. It's about 20 foot deep and filled with about 1 million frogs. But the heron stops by, presumably to spear up the frogs on his way to, I don't know, somewhere, Spain, wherever herons go. But it's usually around March he stops by and sits on a chimney stack or two and jumps in our pond like a kind of waterfowl hot tub and eats frogs. And of course, the crocuses and snowdrops are out now. And I've done some drawings that involve them, and it's such a relief to see, because it's really felt like a long winter this year, I think. Quite a dark one. Anyway, I'll stop there. Talk again soon.